Welcome to session 4 of my work on broken crayons. How to develop deliberate creativity skills and styles. Today comes from chapter 4, what I titled Only Wrapped Pieces of Wax. Very limited term, but that's how too many leaders have looked at, as well as managers and sometimes bosses, their employees, when in reality we all have great abilities that are often untouched or unused. And one of the things I've learned over the years is we need to help people understand what their strengths and weaknesses are. And the research studies I've looked at have shown that those who focus on their strengths while avoiding their weaknesses or finding someone else to take over for those succeed at a much higher level, no matter what they consider success. Yes, we can develop our weaknesses, but if we sacrifice our strengths, we may lose a great deal. Hi, Danny, how have you come? One of the things I started doing many years ago, self-help books kind of led me into it, was studying personality and how you might learn more about your own. And one of the books was this, Understanding Yourself. It's filled with many little short tests and quizzes and games to help you have a better understanding of who you are in order to work on your weak strengths and perhaps avoid your weaknesses. Another one over the years, I came across this one, 1,001 Ways You Reveal Your Personality. From the shoes you wear, from the way you sit, the way you stand, the kind of clothes you wear, your vocal tendencies, a whole field of expertise called Nlp, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, has developed over the last, I believe it's about 30 years, maybe more. For those of you who are knowledgeable in that area, you would know when that started. But the whole premise there was to study speech patterns, word patterns, structures. And people like Eric Berne and a guy named Charles Thomas came up with the book, I'm Okay, You're Okay. And it looked at parent, adult, child patterns. People who speak as a parent have a certain way of speaking, controlling kind of way. Adult tend to be much more objective and straight across. Child, of course, they come from the naiveness or the lack of experience. And the key that Eric Berne and Charles Thomas focused on, are you matching parent to parent, adult to adult, child to child, or diagonal? Those are topics you may want to look into. But one of the issues that came out in the 80s, and sadly with what's happened this past weekend, it's come back in a strong sense, is differences divide, diversity enriches. Unfortunately, not everybody believes that. I started using that as a title many years ago when I was asked, as a trainer, along with a woman trainer, to do a series of programs on diversity for local government. And we looked at many forms of diversity, not just simply race or religion or culture, but also sexual preferences, educational backgrounds, financial backgrounds, and so forth. But the more I looked at it, the more this rang true for me. If I see something that's different between you and I, that will tend to divide us. But if I see it as a form of diversity, meaning you're okay, I'm okay, yes, we do have negatives, we do have weaknesses, but if I look at the strengths of it, then I can see you as the person you are. Well, when I did my doctorate, my main dissertation or research was in the matching of teaching and learning styles. And at that time, right brain, left brain theories were quite rampant. Not necessarily the best word. They were very popular. Roger Sperry and Bogan had won the Nobel Peace Prize for their studies. But many models had been created. There was some already in existence, but they hadn't connected it to the brain directly. But some neuroscience research over the last 40 to 50 years has shown some connection to what happens in the different parts of our brains. But what's happened over the last 50 to 60 years is the development of hundreds of different thinking style models, or learning style, or teaching style. Not all supported by science, not all agreed upon. I did a study in 1984 after I finished my PhD out of curiosity. I wanted to see how similar or how much the same many of these tests are. I chose 300 of them that I had collected over the previous 4 years. Some I had gotten detailed training in. Others I simply was aware of and bought books about. And I did a correlation study of 300 tests with 300 students, with the students randomly selecting 3 of them until all the 300 had been proportionally used. The results were like 0.93 correlation. In other words, they were almost identical. They just had different terms for it. Now, some, like the Myers-Briggs, are very detailed. Some, like the Neethling brain instrument that I was certified in years ago, extremely detailed, well done, have multiple versions of the test. The Herman, which was the one I used in my own research, the Ned Herman's whole brain, is another one of the best that I've come across. Detailed, different way of doing things. From that study of those 300 and finding out that the greatest percentage of them were pretty much the same, just different questions, I started saying, how can I do this in a much simpler way? I want people to think about style and how important it can be, but I don't have the hours or the budget to use extensive testing. So I came up with my own little model using 9 questions after testing it for a while with 8. And now it's been used with over 500,000 people around the world that I am aware of. And the basic graphic I use is 4 arrows aiming out. The premise, not that we start out as a blank slate, as was believed by John Locke many years ago, but that as my mind is going blank. It'll come to me. Anyway, Carl Jung talked about that we have some internal knowledge already. Whether it's in the electrons or whether it's in our genes or where it's stored, no one knows. But people are born with some degree of knowledge. That's why ideally there would be a spot in the middle or some kind of shape, meaning that at birth I have certain strengths already that came to me through my DNA, through my family. I tried to keep it simple. I tried to keep the name simple. And I chose mind design. As a designer, my belief was we have the ability to design our minds. We maybe start with a certain pattern, but we can add to it through education, through experience, through exposure, through travel, through many, many other things we can do in our lives. So today I just want to introduce that concept. For those of you who have been in my workshops in the past, you may be familiar with these. These were the original forms that I used. The white, I'm backwards. The white questionnaire with its 9 questions, and then the general feedback that people receive, telling them a little bit about it. If you go to my website, creating.com, CRE8ng.com, or create Thinking, CRE8 Thinking. You will find a tab in the menu for mind design, and you can fill out the questionnaire yourself. I highly recommend you do that before the 5th or 6th session, because these 3 are about thinking style and how to use it to help you improve your creative thinking. M, I chose the word meditative because it represents the logical, single focus, rational mind, or a way of approaching things. The I chose intuitive because many of the things that come to their minds, there's no connection immediately. It comes from imagination. It comes from unknown. When it came to the N, negotiative. These are the people that are more focused on feeling and heart and soul. They're the type that when they walk in a room, they can tell the mood of the room. They know when they see a friend at lunch or breakfast that they're having some problems. Just something about their body language or their chemistry or karma, whatever term you may want to use if that's the way you tend to approach things. And then there are the highly organized, systematic kind of people. I chose the word directive, meaning that either they direct or they prefer to be directed. So here are the 4 names that I use: meditative, intuitive, negotiative, and directive. The result of the mind. If you're interested in reading more about thinking tests, I've blogged about that a few times. There's just unlimited, seemingly unlimited amount of information you can get through Google or Bing or Yahoo searches just by typing in thinking styles and then handpick. But if you want an overview, one article I wrote out of a series of 200 articles years ago on a blog was about thinking styles. And if I move that in a little closer, Create with Alan is my blogspot.com. And then in the search, type thinking styles. Fortunately, that one's had almost 7,000 people view it. I hope they read it, and not just looked at it and went, oh well, and moved on. So the key for this session is that we develop thinking styles. Those impact everything in our lives, whether we know it or not. People of the different styles of which you can have one most strength, the other 3 moderate, or 3 weak. You can be an extreme in one. There are at least 24 different combinations of which you can have. I see Christine has joined me. Rosita, good to see you. Charles, thanks again. And Richard Sigmund, an elementary school graduate friend of mine. Good to see you. Glad to connect again. A whole series of these sessions are meant to just kind of skim through, give you a Reader's Digest version of the content of this book, Broken Crayons, an introduction to what can be done with creative thinking. I've been watching the previous ones because they're not highly structured, highly scripted. That's not been my intent. I may move that way after I've done this series into more structured as I learn how to add animation and other things other than just my animated hands and body. It's the key that there are actually 4 sections. I misspoke myself in the first one saying that there are 3. There are 4 sections. The first section of 3 chapters, which I covered briefly in 1, 2, and 3, have to do with us, traits that we are born with or born with the capacity to develop. Realistically, of the 400 or 500 that I came across, the idea of trying to develop all of them could become a very stressful situation and not develop results. That's why I chose to narrow it down to 32. Torrance and Guilford and others started with 4: fluency, flexibility, originality, and elaboration. Those are a good start. but we can add to it. We can learn to become more curious. We can learn to become more sensitive. But my stressing in the second section is that, yes, here are the traits, but our ways of dealing with them are different because we have a different thinking style. We have different personalities. We have different backgrounds. So if we tie the two together, the list of traits, the ones that we feel we need in the jobs that we have at the moment, or in the situation that we're in, there may be certain traits that would really be the best right now. Then how do you approach it? How a highly logical person, like a meditative, would approach the idea of being curious is quite different than a negotiative type person who comes from feeling an emotion and being with people all the time, where the meditatives tend to be loners. That we'll get into more in the next section and the following section. So thanks again, folks. I hope you got something of value from it. If you have questions, please send me an email or tag on a comment on the Facebook from post of this video. And best wishes for you in North America, that you have a good evening. And for Thumb, have a great day on Friday, seeing you're already into Friday. Bye-bye.